In this episode, we're turning up the heat to get a bunch of jobs done. Let's go. In our last episode, we modified and installed our oil pan, assembled our accessory drive setup, unboxed and installed our stout 4L80E transmission, and then jammed the whole kit into our mostly willing Tacoma. Some new challenges arose, so it's time to tackle those and keep the hustle dialed up to 11. Let's get to work. Our first job of the day is to clear out the interior a bit, which will give us room to work on a couple big tasks on our list. Since we're going to be doing a lot of crawling around in the interior, let's get these fancy seats out of here. With our custom leather seats out of the way, next we remove the dash. With the dash out of here, now we get a great look at our wiring harness. I need to start studying these books. Nothing beats a factory service manual for chasing down where wires go and how to find them quickly. As usual, I've labeled things as I go to make reassembly quicker and to give me a visual reminder of everything that needs to be plugged in later on. Now we can move to the engine bay and extract that old 4-cylinder engine harness. Dear Toyota engineers, thank you for making this wiring harness so easy to remove. I really appreciate it. So there we go. I doubt we'll use much of this, but we'll definitely reuse that pass-through grommet and some other clamps and mounts to keep our new Holley Terminator X Max engine and transmission wiring organized. Okay, let's keep moving. These factory fuel lines aren't gonna cut it, so they're the next thing to go. These preformed metal lines run the length of the truck back to the fuel tank and charcoal canister setup. They are well secured to the truck, so let's get to it. I've labeled these lines because I'm not sure what I might reuse later on. For my LS3 Miata, I repurposed one of the charcoal canister lines and will likely do that here too. All right, they're out. It wasn't the easiest job, and I'm not sure I did it the best way, but we got them out of there. With all this cleared out of the way, it's time to drop the gas tank so we can install our new fuel pump and larger lines later on. Here's a look at what all we removed. I'll drain the rest of the fuel in this tank and park it into a corner until we're ready to work on it again. In the last video, I showed you how the Tacoma's steering shaft was completely in the way and wouldn't allow any sort of exhaust to be run through there. Let's solve this. Okay everybody, it's time to figure out this steering linkage situation. I've got a bunch of little doodads and parts that I'm gonna try out. Let's see what we can do over here. The doodads and parts I'm referring to are a couple of Toyota and Mazda steering shaft assemblies that I picked up online to try out. The challenge here is that none of the widely available custom steering shafts and joints fit our factory metric Toyota steering parts, so we need to get creative here. Now I have been doing a little bit of tinkering around under here with the steering parts, but with the engine in the way, it's good for test fitting and such, but I just can't do everything I need to do with the engine sitting in there. So step one is engine and transmission, back out. I think you've seen me take the engine out enough times. Let's just cut to the next part. I started this process by removing this steering column pass-through flange that mounts to the firewall. Then I cut the pass-through out of the flange, which we'll reposition and reuse later on. I really don't want to bore you with this entire process, so I'm jumping to mock-up design idea number 72-B, which was getting close, but still not quite there. What I ultimately ended up doing is a version of what hot rodders have done for decades to make steering space for big engines in tight places. Add another joint and a solid mounted spherical rod end to keep everything stable and in line. First step, weld up a stout frame-mounted bracket for our rod end to mount to. That turned out well, now let's test it out. Okay, there's straight ahead. Let's go full lock to the right. All right, there we go. Feels good. Straighten it back out. Nice, full lock left. Yes! Okay, now that we've got a good steering situation all set up and mocked up and working good, now I gotta incorporate this little guy into the mix. This is the old pass-through. You know, it used to be angled and set up for that old position where the steering linkage came out, but now we've moved that all around, so I'm gonna see if I can reuse this somehow and make a new plate or something. Let's get to it. After lots of measuring, testing, and head scratching, here's our modified pass-through flange, tacked up and ready for its permanent redesign. Alright, so now that our pass-through fits and is all done, now we can put on some paint. I love this stuff. I've been using it for many years. It works awesome. Speaking of paint, I figured it was a good time to prime and paint our new steering bracket that we welded up, as well as the faded transmission tunnel. To do this, I masked everything off and got to work. After the paint dried, I installed our new pass-through and reinstalled the rest of the newly modified steering system. It's time to see if this whole contraption works. Oh man, that feels good. Woo! Okay, quick thing. You know, time is weird in these videos. Something that takes a long time. You know, once I clip it all together and edit it, you know, it might be 2 minutes in the video, and I spent way more time than that. This steering's a good example of that. I have spent so much time mocking things up, failing, test fitting, failing again, but I'm so glad it's working. We can move forward now on to the next thing. I'm gonna go lay down for a while. After that job, I needed to work on something that didn't involve me cramming myself into the engine bay. I mentioned in part 1 that we'd be swapping out our puny stock Toyota rear to a Ford 8.8 to handle that newfound power of our turbo V8. Well, now it's time to find one, so I went junkyard hunting and picked up this rear out of a 2001 Ford Explorer. Sadly, some lunatic tore apart my truck, so I had to use my minivan to haul this dirty lump home. Let's unload it. What makes the 8.8 a popular choice for hot rodders is its low cost, good strength, ability to be narrowed easily, and plentiful, inexpensive parts and gearing options. To further sweeten the deal, this 8.8 came with disc brakes, which will be a huge upgrade over our Toyota's outdated drums. This thing was muddy from being dragged around the junkyard, so I took it outside and gave it a quick cleanup so it'll be easier to work with. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is take the old 8.8 here and roll it underneath the Tacoma to see exactly what all needs to be changed. Now, not many people have done this, or at least documented it online that I've seen. But from what I've heard, it's a pretty close bolt-in kind of situation. So let's go see how that looks. All right, here's our first look of the 8.8, kind of just very roughly mocked up in place. And you can already see lots of similarities. Same lug pattern, 5 on 4.5 or 5 on 114. So I can use my stock Toyota wheels, which is great. Another huge benefit of this rear is the width is almost identical to the Toyota rear. It's almost dead on, it's pretty crazy. Another benefit is the leaf spring mounting pad. Look at the one on the Toyota here, and if you go straight down, lines right up with that Toyota leaf spring shackle there. That is pretty sweet. So in some conversions you need to shorten these, in some you need to reposition the leaf spring pad mounting perch. On this one, lining straight up. Now one difference we're seeing here is the Explorer rear end is offset a little more to the left. I'm gonna do a little homework on that. But other than that, it's almost like Toyota wanted us to put this in here. Well, that was really promising. Very happy with everything I saw under there. Obviously, we'll need to do some adapting, emergency brake, the brake lines, little stuff like that. But I think we're in the clear with this thing, and it's ready to be sent off to be rebuilt. After that bit of eyeballing, I loaded the diff back up in my van along with all of our new parts for its upcoming appointment at the rebuild shop. I've been wanting to tackle a rear diff rebuild someday, but this time around I'm going to leave it to the pros. I'll give you a full rundown of what all we did when I get it back. In our last episode, we bolted on this really nice accessory drive setup, which doesn't work. Well, you win some and you lose some. As much as I like this accessory drive setup, everything fit great except for this guy. This big giant bell thing on the end of the F-body water pump. This end piece and this snout just stuck too far out and got too close to our radiator and didn't allow enough room for fans. I think we could have squeezed some in there, but it would have been super tight. I just didn't like the look of it. So let's do a little rework of this whole deal here. Step 1 of our accessory drive revision is to tear it all the way back down. After everything was removed, off came the 5.3 truck damper that we previously installed in favor of one from an LS1 Camaro. All right, that wasn't too bad. I guess I'm getting pretty good at it. I don't want to do this job too many more times though. Okay, quick comparison of these two damper pulleys. Here's the truck pulley, which we had on there. Here's the new LS1 F-body pulley. Look pretty similar until you get down here. Now you can really see the difference. It's going to buy us a lot more room in the front. Okay, let's get to installing this so we can keep moving. All right, here we go. 240 foot-pounds. Woo! That's something else. Woo! That's always fun. Okay, so now we take out this old used crank bolt, install our new one, torque it to spec, we're good to go. So in order to get every millimeter that we can get up front where the radiator sits, I picked up this CTSV water pump. Now they look very similar, the F-body pump and the CTSV, but when you get down this way, now this is the CTSV pump using the truck spacers, and you can see that the belt is riding in the same location, but you can see the amount of extra clearance we have over that giant snout that sticks out of the F-body pump. So we've got our low-profile crank pulley and water pump picked out. Now we need an AC setup to match. To handle the job of cooling off the humid summer months here in the South, I chose this Summit Racing air conditioning compressor. This is a new unit, it's compact, and it uses universal fittings that can easily adapt to different vehicles. To mount our AC compressor, I chose this AC bracket drive setup from Holley. It's specifically made to mount this type of compressor and can be installed using a variety of different LS belt spacing setups. It's great for tight engine bays like ours, and as with all the Holley LS products I've used, the parts and hardware were of excellent quality and the instructions were clear, detailed, and full of helpful info. Okay, let's bolt it up. All right, that looks great. Now we've got the accessory drive sorted. It's time for another test fit. My goal with this round of test fitting is to figure out a transmission mount, see how our new accessories fit and line up with everything. Let's get to it. After wrestling the engine and transmission back into place, I checked over the fit of our tighter accessory drive and it all looked great. Because of that, I made a bunch of measurements and am currently researching the staggering number of LS-specific radiators that are available on summitracing.com. I'll report back once I've made up my mind on that. Earlier on, I picked up this polyurethane transmission mount from Energy Suspension. I like the quality and fit of this piece, but after seeing it in the truck, it just wasn't going to work without some significant modifications, as the mount sat about 1.5 inches past the stock Toyota non-removable crossmember. Bummer, so close. I was fully prepared to fire up the Sawzall and go after that crossmember when I found this interesting solution while browsing the Summit Racing app. This is Summit's adjustable transmission mount. Its design allows for up to 2.5 inches of offset, which makes reaching your crossmember mounting holes much easier compared to fabricating a whole new crossmember setup. It's made of thick steel, includes a polyurethane bushing inside, and is powder coated for corrosion resistance. Here you can see the range of motion you have to work with. You also have some angle adjustment in the mount if needed. Here it is next to our old mount that didn't work out. Unfortunately, the video I recorded of me installing this came out way too dark, so here's the end result, our new adjustable mount, all cinched down and ready to go. Oh yeah, we're getting closer. Thank you for watching, and thank you to Summit Racing for making this video series possible. No matter what you're building, be sure to visit summitracing.com, grab a catalog, or download their handy app for all of your parts, supplies, tools, and so much more. They also have tons of tech info at onallcylinders.com, so be sure to check that out too. Also, don't forget to come hang out with me in any of these spots. I'd love to hear from you. In the next episode, the fast pace continues as we tackle a bunch of important jobs. So with that said, thanks again, folks. We'll see you next time.